Hello and welcome back to another episode of Screen Tested. Today we're going to be taking a look at another armor type, specifically being mail, but it's not the mail you might be expecting. Obviously, real battle-ready type mail is called riveted mail. This stuff here has essentially a whole bunch of different links that are overlapped and then riveted together. There's lots of different types. You can get round rings, flat rings, different ring sizes and diameters, different materials. Things like this one here is made out of like a carbon steel. You can get mild steel, you can get stainless steel, you can get titanium, aluminum, essentially whatever you want, right? But riveted mail is very, very expensive. And the reason why is because obviously, like I said, how it's made individually by riveting each link. It's time consuming, which means a lot of labor costs. However, you might see some cheaper mail on the internet, and that's usually what people might buy without knowing what it is. And that is usually this here. This is budded mail, the stuff that you might see people using in their costumes or in their LARP. And essentially what this is, it's still, some sort of metal. This one here in particular is stainless steel, but essentially the difference between this and real mail is this one is just a ring that's being closed over. It's not actually mechanically held together with a rivet like you would find on real mail. So what that means is it's essentially a lot weaker. But how much weaker? Let's put it to the test in today's episode. Now, obviously you would never be taking this budded mail into any sort of, I would say warfare or combat, right? It's not the same as riveted mail at all. However, it is incredibly cheap. This costs like 40 bucks. It's really, really cheap because it isn't riveted together. Whereas something like my Hauberk, right? A big, mail shirt, right? Costs hundreds of dollars, and that is on the cheaper end. So that's usually why people will pick up this type of mail. It's just far more affordable and readily available. But it does bring up an interesting question. How protective is it really? And especially in more of a modern context, right? We're not talking about going on a battlefield with this, but could this protect you against something like a kitchen knife, something low level like that? Well, that's what we're going to be finding out in today's episode. So let's talk about some of the pros and cons of mail, because I have tested real riveted mail countless times with countless different weapons, and essentially there's a couple of ways you can get through it. If you have a nice blade, like a sword, right, with a nice thrust-centric tip, then that will absolutely be able to penetrate through riveted mail. The same thing with like a dagger, right? If it's made for it and you put enough force into it, you will be able to bust through. But when it comes to slashes, right, if you have a slash-centric weapon, essentially mail can stop it in its tracks. You can't really cut through the metal rings, so it doesn't really do anything at all. And that's where I find budded mail to be interesting, because if it can stop slashes from like a bladed weapon, right, for example, like a kitchen knife, then it's not completely useless, even though it's fake mail. Now, another way to get through mail to defeat it is essentially with blunt force. If you have something like an axe or, a warhammer, something like that, mail has no structure. It's not like plate armor. So essentially it's very, mobile. You have a lot of dexterity in it. But at the same time, if you get hit with something heavy, all of that force gets transferred straight through the mail into your bones, into your organs. So with a bunch of blunt force, you're not actually going to be destroying the mail per se, but you will be destroying your meat suit underneath. All right, let's figure out how useful or useless this particular budded stainless steel mail is. Kind of like this useful segue to today's sponsor. Temu, yes, the mail that we're going to be testing in today's episode was sent by Temu, along with these other products that you can see here on the table. Now, I wanted to show you these because I'm actually quite impressed by all of them, essentially. Let's start off with, well, what's in my hand. This is a pair of blacksmith tongs that are actually made correct. Like, they have a proper profile taper on the handle. They're not heavy. The articulation is great. All I need to do is throw these on the belt sander quickly just to clean them up a little bit, and these are good to go. I'm actually really, really happy. So if you're in the market for some tongs, you should check these out. Next up, this thing here is like a little compressed air type motor thing. I'm actually so happy with this. I'm going to be buying another one. You're probably wondering why I'm so happy with it. Well, something like this in the workshop or to clean your desk or your keyboard is incredibly cool. It's actually really, really powerful. So I actually will be picking up another one of these because I want multiple of them. Next up, we obviously have the mail itself that we're going to be testing in today's episode. So hold off to the end, I guess, if you want to pick up some of this. Next up, this is a sword stand that I use in literally almost every single episode. You guys have seen this this exact stand countless times and it still holds up perfect. So if you need a sword stand, I recommend getting one of them as well. Next up, we have a shield here. Now this I purely got for myself because obviously it is the Achilles shield. I'm planning to repaint it to go with this one. This is just more of a little costume piece to, you know, put on display together. Nothing else than that. But let's talk about the shield behind it, because this particular shield here is made out of solid aluminum. And believe it or not, this can actually withstand something like a war bow. This is incredibly cheap, incredibly lightweight, and it's rather strong. It's more for like a self-defense purpose rather than actual combat, but it is solid, and I did pick up one because I really like it, and I'm probably gonna put, you know, my logo on there or something like that because I really, really like it. And last but not least, I've showed this off before, but I wanted to show it off again. This is a waxed canvas backpack. I use this every single time I go out there filming. Currently, it has a whole bunch of bits of armor in it that I just recently filmed with, because it's held up incredibly well, and I'm incredibly happy with it. New users who download the Temu app using my link in the description box or scanning this QR code currently on the screen, you can use code KNY9644 in the app search bar, and you'll get a $100 coupon bundle and one item up to 90% off. If you already use Temu though, you can use KMV8525 for like 20 bucks off. And remember, this coupon bundle needs to be used within like 24 hours. So if you see something you like, you should grab it before it expires. One of the things that I really enjoy is obviously there's a bunch of local warehouses. So wherever you are in the world, you can actually get products located within your country, meaning you don't have to wait weeks for things to arrive, right? You can actually get it shipped locally. I love that. All right, with that being said, let's get back to today's episode. So here is our Temu mail, and it is kind of what I expected, and I'm not disappointed in the slightest. I think it's actually really, really acceptable in a lot of terms. So obviously there is like really important, you know, context and caveats when it comes to this particular episode, like we usually have when it comes to these kind of experimental, more, you know, out there armor types. Obviously we've done things like the crocodile, and we've done things like, you know, the 3D printed mail. This is one that I wanted to tackle because I think it gets a little bit of a bad rap, but at the same time, the context is what matters so much here. First and foremost, budded mail is not considered to be real mail. Why would you ever opt for something like budded mail over, you know, like real riveted mail? Well, the most obvious reason is simply just price. This was so cheap, what, like maybe $40 US or something, it may be even cheaper. Like, it was very, very cheap. Real mail is way more expensive, hundreds of dollars. So that's the reason why, if you were ever considering to, you know, ever use something like this, it's purely down to like a cost factor. It's just, this is much cheaper in all its forms compared to proper riveted mail, because obviously that's just so much more labor and time intensive to be able to make. This was actually made from a broken katana end, but it is more in that kind of, you know, kitchen knife kind of range, something sadly that you might get attacked with on the street. So let's start off with this. Kind of opened one link, but apart from that, literally no damage. Nothing got through at all. Let's do a couple more. Alrighty, we're actually able to pull some links apart here. But again, keep in mind, this is really important, there's no damage underneath. And I think this, again, is one of those contextual things that usually gets lost. And that is, your armor getting damaged is part of the process. It's supposed to sacrifice itself so that your flesh doesn't get damaged. So all of these rings are taking that kinetic energy. Yes, some of them are being, moved apart and all that sort of stuff. But at the same time, the flesh underneath, perfectly safe. That's the point. Hey. Not as much as you would think. Now again, for context, you're probably like, well, what does a regular stab look like on this particular medium? We'll go right here. Same sort of, kind of effort, I would say. Like, much more. Yeah, okay. We were able to bust through rather easy for that one, which, to be honest, like I said, completely expected. Thrusting for this sort of mail, not good at all. But the slashes, now this particular blade here is a fucking monster, especially when it comes to mail. This tip is really, really good at, you know, getting in the mail, right? But we'll do one slash just to see if we're actually able to get through with the, you know, the blade, right? Now, obviously, when it comes to the slashes, a really important contextual piece is, even if it doesn't actually slash through the mail, which it's not, right? It's steel, it's a barrier between you and your flesh, it's still going to be imparting some kinetic energy, so that is going to hurt, obviously. So let's go right here. Whoa. Here we have our ballistic head. This one turned out pretty good. I'm going to try and chuck this mail on. Now obviously, we wouldn't be putting mail directly on our skin like this. You would want other layers of padding and protection, but it's a very nice visual medium to obviously get the point across. All right, we were able to bust a couple of the links. And we did make it a bit of a flesh wound. Very, very high power. So as you can see, some of the links have actually broken the flesh here, but it did get quite a bit of depth on it. So that is obviously not ideal at all. See, that one didn't get through. No damage at all. I'll come across the side here. Nope, no damage. So again, it's when I really put in a lot, and I mean a lot of force, that we're actually able to like kind of, you know, bust these links open. Now obviously, this is just stainless steel butted mail, so we expect this, but again, we're just trying to figure out what exactly this could stand up to, and would it be at least somewhat a viable option to actually use in a modern context? Again, caveats. I'm gonna start with a soft slash before we do a hard one, because obviously we know the hard one's going to get through, right? So just the soft one right across the head. I hit the previous I hit this damage and like ripped it open. Wasn't actually all that bad. Obviously we've gotten some links that have embedded themselves into the skin very slightly, but that would be just minor damage. That's not a big deal at all. That first slash did not actually do any damage though. Let's try a thrust right here. I don't know if I would recommend butted mail like at all, right? Again, we're exploring these concepts because we want to know what different types of modern armors are good. Specifically, not in the context when you don't have, obviously, man's answer to everything, that being a good old-fashioned force multiply like a gun, right? We're obviously talking more bladed weapons. But I don't think butted mail would be the best application for this. Real mail, though, that's a different story entirely. So the ballistic tests are obviously interesting. Like we have mentioned multiple times throughout today's episode, there is a boatload of caveats. Obviously, I wouldn't be putting this directly on my skin. That's just stupid, right? But at the same time, it didn't hold up. I actually thought this would hold up a little bit better. And the reason being is because I guess the best way to describe this is not all mail is created equal. There are different types of butted mail that I have tested before that did perform a little bit better. So obviously they were thicker rings, they were larger rings, right? All of this stuff plays a huge factor in how this sort of stuff is going to perform, right? This particular mail here was so cheap that I actually just got a second one as well because I wanted it, right? I think it's good to have, whether it's, you know, I don't know, costuming purposes, whether it's a good medium to test. I might even keep this on Tony permanently now to go with our real mail, specifically because we want to test, you know, does this particular weapon actually hold up against something like butted mail, right? That is a good, I think, benchmark to create because obviously we have the real riveted mail, which is much higher of a tier. This is kind of, would I put this, I actually think the Gambison probably performed better than this, honestly. but I think this is a good medium to have as a benchmark. If you guys want to see more of these, you know, kind of like different armored type episodes, I want to do more of them. I find them very fun. I think maybe carbon fiber might be up next. But with that being said, I'll see you next week in another episode. Have a good one, guys.